In the following interview, I sit down with Anna Heiny. Anna is the co-founder of Dream Fuel and Next Level Racing. Not only is she an incredibly impressive entrepreneur, but she's also an 8-time All-American athlete with a degree in neuroscience and a master's in business management. And she also overcame an incredibly serious injury and went on to qualify for the Olympics for a marathon, which is incredible. We talk through diversifying your identity, which is something that I should have done more of, how to come back from major setbacks. As I mentioned, she had an injury that actually landed her in a wheelchair, and what to do when you accomplish seemingly everything you've ever wanted. Anna really wanted to become a professional athlete, a professional runner, and she made that happen. And it was not what she hoped for. And then we talk about the power of guided visualization and breaking the cycle of overworking. This episode is brought to you by our partners at optimizing.ai. If you haven't checked them out yet, I would highly recommend it. Their patented emotion detection technology reveals exactly how your audience feels about your product demos, campaigns, tutorials, onboarding videos, or really any digital experience. So you no longer have to wonder if they're actually working, if they're evoking a response, or if maybe they're confusing users. And they are actually offering every listener of the Wake Up Call a 2-month free trial. So you can go to the show notes below and just type in Wake Up Call when you're booking your free setup session. And last but not least, you've heard me talk about these guys quite a few times now, but big shout out to Dream Fuel. They are a mental performance coaching platform for leaders and teams. I'm actually interviewing one of the co-founders on this episode. It was a huge game changer for me, working with their team of elite coaches, both from a performance standpoint, also just my mental health. And what's super cool is they've been giving away free one-to-one coaching calls for all listeners, and a ton of you have taken them up on it. And I know a few of you are actually already working with their team, which makes me incredibly happy because I know it's going to just have such a big impact on your life, both professionally and personally. So they are still offering a free one-to-one coaching call. They are scaling it back a little bit. So they're just doing 5 each month. So I'd highly recommend you check them out. Again, you can go in the show notes and book the free one-to-one coaching session. But that's it. That's all. Now, on to my episode with Anna. And we are live. Anna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you with us. And I thought it'd be really cool to have you on as one of the first guests because you just have such a unique vantage point, as folks can probably guess from your bio and some of the things I spoke about. But you're an ultra high performer yourself, and then you also coach a lot of high performing entrepreneurs and athletes. So you've got kind of this duality and a few different vantage points. But, I thought it would be interesting to start this conversation kind of at the beginning. And, if you can think back when you were young, what did success look like for you? And I guess, like, what did that vision look like from an early age?
Yeah, that is a great question. Success when I was young, and really what I'd say has been for me throughout the most of my life has been correlated with the effort that I put in, where I have high goals and high expectations for myself, but it's always been about, am I putting in everything that I can to be my best? And if I am, then I can be satisfied with the result. Even if it's not the one that I want, but I know I couldn't have changed anything, then I can still walk away satisfied. I think that's part of also why I got into long distance running, is because it is something that's uh, in certain circumstances, it's a team sport, but it's highly individualized. And it is one of those that you get out what you put in. And yeah, the success that I have seen is largely due to that effort.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a healthy way to look at success, and one that, as I'm going on my own journey of redefining success for me, that's something I think that I'm just learning now. I think for me, it was so outcome based, even at a young age. I played a lot of sports growing up, and it was like, training to me almost like didn't matter. It was like, no, we train to win. And if that didn't happen, then it would really affect me. And I sort of carried that into my professional life. And, I knew I was always working hard, but if I got a few bad bounces, it would really, really affect me. And you would kind of feel the weight of that. Um, do you think you were born with that knowledge and that kind of, wisdom of focusing on the inputs versus the outputs? Or was that something you were taught?
I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure just knowing what I know about psychology and specifically adolescent developmental psychology and such, I think it has to have been something that I learned from my parents and from my siblings, but I don't necessarily recall them saying it. I also wasn't very good at different sports until I was probably about 12 or 13. And so if I based it solely on winning or losing, then it wouldn't have been a very I probably would have just quit altogether. Um, so I think that that may have also played a role in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I think there's like a bit of a blessing and a curse. I feel like I was lucky that I was naturally good at a few things, but the negative of that is even at a young age, if I wasn't immediately good at something, I would like not do it. I would just like not
Mhm.
put in the work and like shy away from those things, which is interesting now as I'm getting older and like rediscovering things that I actually enjoy. And that's not always what you're good at. You can suck at
Yeah.
something and really enjoy it. And I'm like
Yeah.
kind of just learning that again.
See, I grew up with two older brothers as well, and so I was always the worst at whatever we were doing. Being the youngest in the family, and to the brothers, I was usually always the worst at the family games and at the sports. And I just needed to catch up, of course. But so now it's good. I have something I can hold on my brothers now that I'm older.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Um, do you know where your drive came from or comes from? Like long distance running, we'll put the two businesses that you run aside and all these incredible people that you coach and talk about long distance running. Cause like the drive, I mean, sometimes every step you have to like convince yourself. Like in those moments of I want to give up, do you know where that drive comes from?
It's something that it is a combination of something that is natural that I think I learned as a kid, as well as something that I've deliberately trained for years. Because it hasn't always been that easy, but I do think there's always been that piece of me that has wanted to work really hard. I think it probably comes from a lot that I learned from my mom as a kid, where we're similar in a lot of ways, in that she she's persistent and she doesn't want, if someone tells her she can't do it, then she'll do it and she'll do it twice. That kind of thing. It's like she finds a way to do it. Um, but not in a like an overbearing way or something, but it's more I think just to prove to herself in certain things. And so as a young girl, I think seeing my mom do these things that maybe uh, thought a woman couldn't do or something like that. And it could be something simple, like we're building a patio and she's going to be the one helping carry all the bricks and stuff, is like, but just little things like that. I think we're an example for me in recognizing that there is not a limit on what I can do. And the running was something that it didn't matter how coordinated I was as a kid, but it was something that I could control how much work that I put in, and kind of being able to defy the odds of what other people thought I could or couldn't do.
Hmm. Hmm. Along that way, did it feel more like you were, I guess, like chasing some goal or running from something? I know from my journey, I would kind of now, if I'm honest, I feel like I was running away maybe from feelings of inadequacy or trying to prove people wrong or trying to show people as the best. So it felt more like I was actually running from something. Um, which one of those resonates with you more, chasing something or running from something?
I would say my mentality around it was a lot more of chasing something, where um, I would set different goals for myself throughout a season. And that when I was real young, it was getting to state. And then suddenly it shifted to winning the state championship, and then winning the national championship, and then going to college, and um, kind of that progression from there. But each time the drive was a lot, I think it was a lot more of wanting to prove to myself that I could do it, and I wanted to chase those goals. There was an instance when I was in high school, I won the national championship in cross country as a sophomore. As a junior, the same time, I had two broken feet, had two
Oh,
stress fractures, and was in a wheelchair and couldn't compete. And
wow.
so my drive that next through the recovery period and then into the next year was, I want to prove to everyone that I can still come back and be faster than I was. And so that's what motivated me through that whole basically year of time of getting back and then getting to the next cross country season. I did end up getting there. I did end up reclaiming the national title, but that was one of those instances where I was I think more wanting to prove to others than myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Two broken feet. That's crazy. And then coming back and winning the national championships. Congrats. That is so cool. Did you have, I'm always curious about this, is like I imagine at this time, your identity is so wrapped up in being a runner, being a successful runner, being a very successful runner. And then the two things that make that identity possible, which are your feet, um, are gone. And, they're broken. They're not available to you. Did you have any kind of identity crisis at that point? When you're just sitting there being like, okay, what's next now?
I did for a little bit. I did have it was a really big mental struggle. And especially being a teenage girl going into school in a wheelchair is a whole nother
Hmm.
mental barrier to overcome. It's a very humbling experience. But it's one of the pieces that I always try to coach both young athletes as well as adults on is this thing called diversity of identity. And it's just getting people to put their life, their interests, their pieces of their identity into different buckets, and be able to see how much time, how much you ultimately care about different ones a different degree. And you're focusing on one sometimes more than another. But this idea that we have so many different pieces of our identity was very important to me early on. And it wasn't necessarily something that I went about intentionally, but I luckily was kind of already stuck in it, I would say, in a good way, where my family, both my dad's side of the family, my mom's side of the family, everyone did marching band. And so for me, I was in the band, and I that which is also year round. It wasn't just marching band, but it was throughout the year. And we did I was also involved in like our school yearbook, and some of these in a youth group. My faith has always been very important to me, and that was also a big aspect that helped me through that identity shock, I would say. But when I found myself with these two broken feet, I had probably a week where I was very, very down and very upset. And then I realized like it's going to be a good 5 months before I run again. And I have the choice of moping around and being upset about it for 5 months, or I can make the choice to lean on these other aspects of my life or my identity and try to make the most out of it. And so I gave myself the time to be sad. And then I shifted my focus to these other things that I can work on that I care about. And then also, when I'm not running, what can I do to help myself become a better runner? So I spend a lot of time in the pool, a lot of time on a bike, a lot of time lifting weights, and just doing everything that I could to still feel like I was improving as an athlete.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about this idea of identity diversity. I haven't heard of that before, and I think it's really smart and something I could have done better. I think where I fell apart in that is like I had a lot of different interests and diversity in my life. I used to like act as a kid. I played a lot of sports, reading in school was important. I had all these things, but the overwhelming bucket, the only thing that mattered in all those things was like achievement. So it was almost
Mhm.
as if I bucketed all of those things into just achieving Scott. And that was the only thing that sort of mattered. Um, how do you coach people to think about that? Like when you're introducing the idea of identity diversity, how should people think about that and start incorporating that into their lives?
It starts off with just simply a conversation on what are some of the things you love to do and tell me about yourself. So for me, running is a big bucket, but there's also coaching. There's neuroscience and psychology is some kind of goes into coaching, but it's a little bit different. But also I'm a wife and I'm a mother and I am like Christian and all these different things that I care about. And then there's a bucket for hobbies. What are some of the things that you do just for fun? They don't matter quite as much. Things like I've gotten into baking bread in the past in the past couple of years, but I wouldn't say I'm great at it, but it's kind of a fun thing to do. So there's, maybe 6 different buckets and they're different sizes. But the point is now that we've identified these different pieces of my identity, when one isn't going as well, like if running isn't, I haven't been able to race in a while and I'm injured or something, if I can focus my time and my energy on what I'm doing really well in one of these other buckets, like how was I come back from a run, had a terrible workout, but how can I be a really great mom today? And so it allows you to shift your focus towards something else that's truly important to you. It's not just an arbitrary idea, it's something that is core to you. And it just allows you to not put so much weight on one piece of your life.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that a lot. I like that. And I'll I'll give you a plug on the both the mom and the runner side. Our mutual friend Kevin Bailey told me that you recently did you win the Indy Marathon as you're pregnant with your second child?
At first, it was just a half marathon. So I know
Okay,
people say,
just
"Oh,
a
it's just
half
a half marathon." But it is. I mean, the difference between 13 and 26 miles. I don't know if I would have won a full marathon. But yes, I did. It was May of 2024.
Crazy. Congrats. That is huge. Um, that's got to be like some record, hey? I don't think a lot of people are winning half marathons while they're pregnant. I don't think I've ever
It
heard of that.
probably is. I should look into it actually and see
Mhm.
if it was. Yeah, like you said, I don't know how many people have gone out and tried to race a half marathon.
No, and they're giving out Guinness records for all sorts of strange things. So you definitely deserve one. There's like I think a bucket for some guy ran a marathon in a banana costume, and he's got the
Yeah,
fastest
yeah,
time. So if that exists, then I think yours
you're
definitely
right. I'll look
is
into
good.
it.
Yeah, it's so cool. And just that's testament to your mentality. So along your journey, and now kind of expanding the scope. So your younger years, you're um, very much identify as like an athlete and a runner, and you've got these other parts as well. And then you go forward in life and become a successful businesswoman. You get a degree in neuroscience and behavior. You get a master's in business management. Can you point to a time where maybe your vision of the future or the way you saw things started to crack a little bit? Did you have a wake up call in your personal life, um, or when you think about that, is it more the time when you were bedridden with these two broken feet?
I would say the wake up call came much later. When I did have the two broken feet, there was a piece of me that just knew there was something good that was going to come out of this. And I knew this wasn't my running career wasn't over. There was a chance of that. I think even after surgery, there was still only like a 70% chance that I wouldn't re-break my foot. Um, so I knew there was a possibility that it could end up that way. But um, yeah, just a piece of me knew it wasn't over. So I would say fast forwarding through college, um, I ran at University of Notre Dame, and it was my end of my sophomore year. I got this back injury. It was kind of just an accident that had happened. It was likely caused from the weight room, but I got a bulging disc in my low back, and that was one that kind of it just kept coming up off and on throughout the rest of college. I'd have just be getting to my peak fitness in the season and feeling really good, and then I'd have this flare up of the back, and um, it would present itself in like kind of neurological symptoms. So I would have some back pain, but it would usually show up as really heavy legs. Like I'd be running and suddenly I wasn't tired, but I just couldn't move my legs faster. So highly frustrating as a distance runner. But again, I kept having these ups and downs. And so I thought I wanted to keep pushing through. And I saw so many different doctors and physical therapists, and they kind of helped teach me ways to keep it at bay. And then got to the end of my college career and decided, you know what, I'm going to try to run professionally. I know this injury might come up again, but if I don't pursue this now, I'm always going to wonder what it could have been. So chose to run professionally. I signed a contract with the Boston Athletic Association and moved out there. This was actually during the pandemic too. So I had a grad year, and then the pandemic was going on, and it was kind of a odd timeline, but I ended up after that going out to Boston, and I was so excited. I'd thought about running professionally since high school, and I was finally there. And the wake up call was realizing uh, that it was not all what I had actually dreamed of. And it's a really harsh reality when you think you're going to go out and live your dream, and your dream is actually not at all what you think it's going to be. So there are a lot of factors behind that. And, maybe if I joined a different team or a different location, and maybe if it wasn't during the pandemic, things would be different. But I'm a believer and everything happens for a reason. So I found myself out in Boston, and my back injury came back and I was realizing like, I don't like I was putting so much energy and effort into that bucket of running that it was no longer serving me, and it was no longer fun. And then you put injury on top of that, and some of the other buckets of my identity that I care so much about are like my family. That's a really big one. And I was, hours and hours and hours away from family. And And so I was just diving deeper and deeper into, what do I really care most about? And is this something that will get better if I wait it out? Because resilience is one of my core values. And so I'm not going to just quit something when it gets hard. But I had to really think through, is this something that will get better if I wait it out? Or do I need to make a really hard change? And I thought through all the factors of what was bothering me, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what my body was telling me, and knew that I needed to cut my contract short. So went through all the loopholes to make that change, and moved back to Indiana. Um, but the interesting piece of that this kind of incorporates the wake up call and incorporates the mind body connection that's so central to mental performance coaching. The back pain I was having usually felt its worst when I was sitting in a car, and I had to drive back from Boston. It was about a 14-hour drive. And so I anticipated I'd probably get home and just be in terrible pain once I arrived. When I got home, my back felt the best that it had felt in a couple months. And that to me was the piece of assurance that I had made the right decision, because we do hold stress in our body. We do holding in anxieties, past traumas, all these things. They do get held in the body if they don't get let out properly. And so to me, that was that indicator that I was in a place where my body was showing me that this wasn't where I belonged at that time. Um, and yeah, it was a wake up call that I care a lot about running, but it's not something that I should be putting so much time and effort in. So then that was when I got, shortly after I connected with Kevin, and started co-founding Dream Fuel with him.
So cool. Yeah, I mean, I can resonate a lot in my own way with that feeling, and actually reminds me of a Lou Holtz quote, a famous football coach, and he says something like, it's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it. You know, so we all sort of we can have all this pressure, and sometimes we're just like carrying it the wrong way. Maybe the passion's not there anymore, and it's like breaking us down, maybe more than it should be. And you know, there's something. It feels like a gift, and then it's also very painful to realize that dream that you've always wanted in your life, and then also to realize that it's not the thing. I think a lot of people can probably resonate with that. For me, it felt like I was I just hadn't updated my software. I felt like, I missed the phone updates. Like I was running on what my 12-year-old self thought was a fulfilling, successful life for me. Yeah, going and, you know, chasing all these things in tech and then in venture. And I just hadn't sat down and take the time like you did during this time. Be like, okay, what really matters to me, and how do I want my life to look like? Um, was there any like sort of big truth that hit you in those moments?
Oh, there certainly was. Um, it's hard to like, I think, say it concisely, but the big thing that hit me was that shift in identity. That I actually don't want my identity to be just the runner. And I remember shortly after I'd made a trip to my hometown, and um I was out something with, I think it was at like the church that I went to as a kid. There was like a little gathering going on, and I went there. And so there were several people that I knew from growing up. And I remember someone came up to me, and this was a fairly sensitive time after after this had gone on. And so I knew people were probably going to ask me, "Oh, I thought you were out in Boston." And a couple people did, one or two. And I don't exactly remember how I responded, but I do distinctly remember that one guy came up to me and said, Anna, are you still playing the flute? And it was like the biggest relief to me to have somebody ask that. It was like that was a light bulb moment for me to realize I care about running, and it's always going to be a piece of me and a piece that people know me for, and that's good. But I don't want it to be all that people know me for. And so that when that man asked me that question, it was kind of that moment for me of realizing, yeah, I don't want to just be the runner. So I hadn't been playing flute much at that point, so I think he was disappointed at my answer. But yeah, it was very eye-opening to me to be able to realize it's not that to realize that I shifted from wanting to do something to feeling like I had to do something because others expected me to.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that story about the flute. It is amazing where these little moments can be like, this person sees me as something more than what I've tied so much of my identity to. Had a somewhat similar experience just over the weekend where I used to like paint and draw a lot when I was younger, and then that kind of got pushed to the side for overachievement and things, and just sat down for a few hours and like painted again and realized like, oh, similar to you, I used to play the flute. Like I used to paint and like really like this thing. Maybe I should incorporate this back into my life again. Um, and so if I'm getting this timeline correctly and what I know about your background, after this wake up call, you didn't like throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. Like you still are a runner. I think many, when they have their
Mhm.
wake up call, they feel like this intense need to like push that old identity away, for better or worse. Uh, but you then qualified for the Olympic trials after that wake up call. Is that correct?
Mhm. I did. And it happened because I took a step back for a little bit of time, for a couple of months. And then it, the act of running is something I've always enjoyed. Take out the competition, the racing, the adrenaline. I still just enjoy the act of running. And so that's something that I don't think will ever go away. So once my back was feeling good and I was kind of healed, I started running some again. And I didn't give myself any type of timeline on when I needed to race again or this or that. And I just allowed myself to enjoy it and not put uh, any like dopamine triggers in there, those rewards. And once I started getting in a rhythm again, I decided, you know what, something I've always wanted to do is run a marathon. And I believe that I can do it without getting injured, but I need to do it on my own terms. I don't want a coach to tell me what to do. I didn't even want to run with people. I didn't want to have a team because I knew there's going to be days when I shouldn't run a workout because something came up. And so I'm going to get on the bike instead. But when you're with a team or you have a coach that tells you need to do this workout on this day, they usually are flexible with you if you tell them, but it just gets harder to not do it. And if you're with a team, you feel like if the team's doing it, I need to do it. So I trained myself and showed up. I ran my first marathon in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I ran with one person the whole race. But I went into it. I didn't actually even know what the Olympic trials time was. I just did it. I set a goal for, really the first time you're on a marathon, I don't think anyone really knows exactly how to pace it. You do your best and
Mhm.
usually then figure it out your second or third. Um, so I had an idea of how to pace it and was able to hit that time. And then once I finished the marathon, a friend texted me a couple hours later, was like, "Oh my gosh, congrats, you got the trials time." And it's like, wow, I didn't, it was exciting, but there was also a piece of like fear that came back when I discovered that
Yeah.
because I wasn't ready to get back into that level of competition yet. And
Mhm.
I needed that time. So I ended up getting married that fall and, um, then it started coming back after I kind of stepped away again of still running, but not training for anything in particular, and wanted to go back to Boston because I felt like um, I had something to prove to myself there. Like I wanna leave this on good terms, because I left on really bad terms. And I wanted to kind of go back and have that moment of redemption for myself. So I ended up running the Boston Marathon in 2023, and then hit the standard, Olympic standard again, but ran it much faster. But again, it was one of those, like, this is on my terms. And I know there's a way for me to do this healthy and do it where I'm not putting so much focus on this piece of my identity.
Yeah. An incredible feat, and must have been such a cool feeling to, like, wow, I can do this thing out of joy, not out of like just like a
Mhm.
rigorous routine. Um, I think that's an interesting thing to wrestle with. Like during that time period where you don't even know the times for Olympic trials, you're kind of just doing this intuitively. Do you think that kind of joy and discipline can coexist? I imagine you had to be quite disciplined during that time, with a training schedule and what you were putting in your body and everything still. Um, yeah, talk to me about the relationship between just doing something for fun, but having still the discipline um, to be able to do it well.
Yeah. See, I actually think we need discipline to feel joyful. And I say that because as human nature, there's a piece of us that we need some type of guidelines. We need some type of rule book, because it helps us learn how to be our best. So you can think about going through school, going through college, learning whatever you do for your career. There was someone that taught you certain things. And um, having, I like to think of, I've heard the analogy before too, of a car has a manual. So you could use your car however you want to use it, and never change the tires, never get an oil change, not follow any guidelines, and your car would work for a while, and then eventually it would break down. But we have this manual because it helps us be able to use a car to its fullest degree. And so for me, that's like, we need discipline because it helps us really be the best people that we can be. And, everyone kind of, like, let's say you go out with friends and have a couple drinks and a burger and fries, and you feel great. And then afterwards, you kind of feel like, I don't feel as great about about that, or little things like that. I think a lot of people can feel that, and it's because there's a piece of discipline that helps us be the best humans that we can be. And so for me, the discipline of training, it comes because partly it's just ingrained in me. I've done it for years and years, and that's just part of who I am. But it's also because it makes me feel good about myself. It makes me feel accomplished when I sit down at my desk to start the day and I already ran 10 miles and showered and ate breakfast and did all these things. And um, yeah, it just gives you that feeling of joy that comes from being disciplined.
Yeah, it actually, I've heard this quote, and I think listeners to this podcast will know my head's full of quotes, but I can't remember who to attribute them to. So hopefully in the show notes, we'll just like go back and give people the props. But I really like it. And the quote is, um, discipline is the highest form of self-love, which I
Mhm.
really, really kind of resonate with. It's almost like you're you're showing love to your future self by sacrificing maybe the immediate present a little bit to set them up. So I really like that sort of mentality. Um, so along with discipline, I guess post wake up call for you, what tools did you rely on? Any mindset or spiritual shifts that helped you internalize and kind of facilitate this change into a new way of being?
There certainly were, but what was interesting was what my next phase was was leaning more into a new career. My career was running, and now leaning into starting. Actually, I had started my own business coaching athletes kind of during the running period that I still do currently. But getting in contact with Kevin, my co-founder, and building Dream Fuel, which is a mental performance coaching company. So as I was shifting into that role, I was inherently learning more tools on mental performance, and practicing them and incorporating them into my life as needed to learn more about Dream Fuel and such, and learn more about how to be a great coach, but realizing how much I needed them myself as well. So one of them being gratitude. I had practiced gratitude. I did seem like I'm a pretty grateful person in general, but I never had an intentional gratitude practice where I would really like pause and think about it or say it or write it down. Um, and that was a big one that helped me shift those moments of seeing other people competing and I couldn't do it. But then being able to shift and reframe that to, no, I'm really grateful for where I am right now. Look at this opportunity that has come up. Um, so gratitude was a big one. And then also, I had always done some type of journaling, but it was more, say, ad hoc. And I started journaling a little bit more, and specifically about intention for my day. Just a 1-2 sentences about how I wanted to show up. What was my intention? And I found that that was very helpful as well in shifting into this next phase, because it helped me choose what I wanted to focus my mind on that day. It's like my mind's not going to be focused on how fast I'm running this workout. My mind's going to be focused on how am I showing up fully focused and attentive to each person I talk to, for example. So those are a couple that were very helpful for me.
Yeah. What does your gratitude practice look like? Is it as simple as, writing 3 things down that you're grateful for every morning, or what does that sort of look like for you?
The interesting thing about gratitude is that the way that it works in the mind, where it strengthens these, like you can think about it as scarcity versus abundance. It strengthens these abundance mindset, where it causes you to see see the glass half full versus half empty. And it's not like you're just undermining bad things and just pretending everything is good. But what it does is it helps you think through, like, okay, this bad thing, this negative thing happened to me today. But instead of just thinking about it as negative and I should have done this, I should have done that, you're thinking about it as, well, what did I learn? How is this helping me? How is this helping me grow? What good came out of it? So that's, the more you practice gratitude, that becomes instinctual. And so I don't have a gratitude practice right now that's like write things down or specifically talk about it, because I did that for such a long time that it does actually become something that's a habit, where I go for a walk and I notice little things, and I um, have this gratitude that I'd say is just incorporated into my everyday.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that's a more powerful way of doing it. I remember reading, even just for like the reward system. So like, back in the day in sales, I learned if someone, did something really good, had a great client meeting, something happened, go and giving them like compliment or feedback right at that moment is way more powerful than doing it on your one-on-one like a week later. So catching yourself in those moments when you can feel gratitude as it's happening, I imagine is has a bigger impact than recalling that later, maybe in a journal or something. So walking around with that gratitude presence, and I do want to, of course, shout out yourself, Kevin, and Dream Fuel for being just incredible partners to this podcast. And I made it was very intentional that I was only going to partner with companies that I feel a deep alignment with. And, I can tell the listeners, I actually was coached by Kevin and the Dream Fuel team as I was raising this last insane $55 million venture fund. And I certainly couldn't have done it without some of the tools that I learned, particularly around guided visualization. What you guys do and in that is really, really incredible. Do you want to talk a little bit just about guided visualization and how maybe people can incorporate that into their life? Because athletes do it all the time. Fighter pilots do it all the time. In business, it's not a tool that we use as much as we could. And it was a huge, huge unlock for me.
Mhm. Visualization it's mental imagery. It's going through a scenario, an outcome that you're chasing with as much detail and emotion as you can. And you can do this on your own. At Dreamfield, we do guide people through it. So we kind of talk about what's the outcome you're after and the steps you have to take to get there. How do you want to feel? How do you want to behave, etc. And we craft a script and actually then read it to you. So it's a little bit easier to be guided because you don't have to think as much. You can kind of sit back, and you're not what do we say? You're not the producer and the actor at the same time. But it is something you can do on
almost
your
just
own.
like feel it, instead of like
Yeah.
you're thinking it and trying to feel it. I really like that I could just feel it. And sometimes I'm highly emotional. I feel like I definitely shed a few tears on one of them. It
It's
was
not
wild.
uncommon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's impactful because it's working with the mind to essentially create a pathway in your brain, like a memory. Like this idea, this outcome that you visualize has actually happened. And when the emotion is key, because emotion is what creates neuroplasticity in the brain, those new neural networks, or those changes in neural networks. And when there's enough emotion in it, it creates that change and it makes it strong. So if you listen to it again, or you do it a couple times, or it's a really, really good visualization, that network is strong. And what it does is it starts causing you to be aware of your environment and what is going to help you get to that outcome. So some people will say like, I visualized this and it just happened. It was amazing. And we'll take the credit for that if you want to give us credit for it. But really what happens is you are so hyper aware of this because it's a memory. It's something that's important to you that your brain has created. And so you start now being aware of what's around you. So I like the example of whatever car you drive. If you're out driving, you notice other people that drive that car, but you don't notice the gold Prius that is, on the highway. And it's because your car is relevant to you. And so your brain picks up on it. So when you visualize something, that outcome is relevant to you, and your brain starts paying attention to your environment and what are the things around me that's going to help me get to that outcome. So I'd love to say it's magic and it just it happens, but it really does work profoundly with the mind to help people achieve an outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it certainly feels like magic, and it's cool that science is now catching up. So we don't have to describe it as magic anymore. There's like mirror neurons and everything that are getting created. And yeah, I saw this video just like 2 weeks ago it was all these fighter pilots, and their, I guess, like commander is walking them through a mission just in a boardroom. And I immediately thought of Dream Fuel and your team, and like it felt like exactly what you do. And you could watch them all, even like their fingers are moving and they're pressing all of the buttons in this completely simulated environment, which is really, really cool. And I think it's going to play a much bigger part in, call it, corporate America in the future, as we kind of move towards, seems like, more smaller teams. With AI exploding everywhere, we're kind of getting these teams of just like ultra high performers that get together, and I think people are going to look at ways, just like sports teams and people that have to perform have done for a long time. So I'm excited to see some of those changes. One thing I wanted to ask you, flipping a little bit to your experience, coaching all these incredible folks. A lot of the listeners that listen to this are, high performers, but, they may be called to listen to this because they're maybe realigning their relationship with work or they're feeling close to burnout. What are some of the common negative threads you see with high performers? And how can maybe we harness them for good, or maybe just watch out for them?
There is a common cycle that I've seen many times that, like you said, can be a big positive, but also can be a detriment as well. One of them being perfectionism. You end up often getting to the level that you're at because you put so much effort into making something seemingly perfect. But then it can also be detrimental because can anything really be perfect? And it can cause this almost catastrophizing or over analyzing something to the point where you can't make a decision because it's we work with a lot of people that have to make very, very big decisions that don't just impact them, but impact a company or several companies and how many thousands of people are within there. And so this perfectionism or this catastrophizing that it leads to can really inhibit the ability to make decisions, and also just cause extreme anxiety. And so one of the things we do is simply identifying what is your idea of success and your idea of perfect and breaking it down. Is this attainable? Is this something, how can you track your progress towards it? So here's your idea of perfect, your idea of success, and where are you now? So wherever you are now, what are the stepping stones you can take to get there? And by people simply seeing the progress that they are making and tracking that progress, it helps them feel that improvement and know they're getting there, but also identifying what's perfect and seeing if is this actually feasible or not can also help people get almost the wake up call that they need. And is this good or is this not? And then one other piece that a cycle that I see a lot is this, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it, because sometimes I think it depends on the person and the scenario and the business. Sometimes I think it's something self-imposed more so than necessity, but not all the time, where there's this need to work late. You have to keep working. There's, you have to stay up and do X, Y, and Z. And then because of that, then you don't sleep very much. And then you don't sleep very much. Your mind's not focused the next day. So you drink a lot of caffeine or whatever it is to get yourself amped up, trying to focus. That can also cause a feeling of anxiety with too much caffeine, can cause you not to be able to focus. Because you're not focused during the day, it leads to that need to have to work late again, because it's this cycle. If you're able to fix that, honestly, fixing sleep is a big one. If you could fix that sleep cycle, it allows you to be able to focus better. We teach a lot of tools that help you get into a flow state to help you get that work that needs done in a reasonable amount of time, so that you don't have to perpetuate that cycle of late work, stress, not able to sleep, either because you're going to bed late or because you're stressed, and then being able to get then again focus and show up the next day.
Yeah, I can relate to perfectionism. I can relate to the second one of overworking for sure. I can actually look back, and the times that I was working the most was probably some of the least productive times. When I was putting in the most hours, I was oftentimes caught in that loop that you described. Like I was unfocused, but then you almost feel, because you're unfocused, you feel like more hours will make up for it. And you're just focused on those wrong things. And Oh, we could do a whole episode on sleep. That's one that I I might bug you online. It's still something I struggle with. It's getting better since I walked away from the fun. But um, you mentioned flow state. Tips for getting into flow state? I feel like it's always so elusive for me, but when I get in it, it's just like, oh, I can get 5 days worth of work done in like 5 hours, I feel like.
Mhm. Yeah, there are a lot of different factors involved. If I were to say uh top two ways, one's going to be make sure you're in the right environment. As if you're in a place that is not conducive to being able to think well, it's not going to help. For some people, that might be a coffee shop with people walking around and background noise. For myself, I would need to be in a quiet space with nobody around and, phone in a different place. So that proper environment does look a little bit different for certain people, but the environment is the start of it. And then how can you get your body and mind in a place where you can focus? And I would, myself, and I know many of my colleagues would say breath work is going to be one of the fastest ways to get you into flow state. There's so many different kinds of breath work out there. One of the big ones, Dream Fuel, has been diving deeper and deeper into in the past year is somatic breath work. So you can look into that a little bit. The ideal is you do it for like 30 to 60 minutes, but it's something that can be done in 10. There's other different types of breath work that can be done in, 3 to 5 minutes. Depends on the amount of time you have. But breath work just has a profound impact on our physiology. We can get your physiology into um, a focused state, or it's a little bit of a heightened state as well. That's that is what primes the mind then to be able to focus on the task at hand.
I actually just did the Viking row breathwork live with Alex on your team last
Oh,
week.
good.
And it was super, super cool. I mean, I think by the end of this podcast, I will have converted everyone into breathwork because I'm such a fan. You'll probably hear it every episode. It has truly been maybe the most impactful part of my practice has been breathwork. So we'll put some in the show notes, and I would highly recommend, take 30 minutes, try this out. It's pretty incredible. And it's
Mhm.
it's just a free, we pay for these yoga classes and these nice gyms. This thing is free. Oh, you're just
Mhm.
breathing, which is incredible. And it's available anytime. Um, I'll share one last thing. When I used to go into important meetings, I always felt this need from a very beginning of my career to like get my energy levels up and like get amped up and like go chug 2 coffees and like be all like fired up. And um, what I found in the last few years, kind of through breathwork, was actually doing like a down regulated breathwork before a
Mhm.
big meeting. So I had this like calm presence, not as like fired up, and the outcomes were much better, and I felt better too. So highly recommend. Um, well, Anna, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I just have one final question before I let you go. If you could pull someone aside who is maybe feeling close to burnout, or maybe just had a significant wake up call in their life, and you have just a couple minutes with them, let's say on the sidelines or in the locker room, the proverbial locker room, or um, what would you tell them?
Mhm. I would tell them to lean into the different aspects of their identity and identify, if they haven't already identified, what their core values are. Because in those moments of, real crisis or seeming something that feels like crisis, whatever it may be, those are the moments when you need to know who you are and what you stand for. And if you have not identified that, then those really challenging moments can feel like the world is crashing down. But if this is just one piece of me, and here are the things that matter most to me, here's what guides the decisions that I make, and the people that I care most about are in alignment with that. Those are the pieces that help in scenarios of burnout, but also in those scenarios where you do have a wake up call. You recognize I'm not at the right place at the right time. This isn't what I should be doing. Um, Knowing your core values and knowing who you really are and what you stand for allows you to know what that next step might be. And to then also, in my opinion and what I've experienced, it kind of helps you feel at peace too with that wake up call, to know that it's okay because there's something better out there.
Yeah. Great advice. And that's certainly something I'll be walking away from this conversation with, is this idea of um, identity diversification. And I think I've got
The-
some homework to do myself, but I think that's a really powerful concept. And appreciate you sharing with us. Appreciate you spending the time. If people want to follow along with you, I know you're sort of on a sabbatical right now. Um, do you post on LinkedIn, X, through Dream Fuel? What's the best way to keep following your journey?
Yeah, the LinkedIn would be a big one for Dream Fuel, kind of on the side with the athletes I coach. It's funny, there's so much alignment, so much overlap with coaching athletes as there is with coaching CEOs. I do a lot of mindset tips on Instagram as well. It's
Cool.
Coach Anna Rohr. Rohr is my maiden name, Rohrer.
Perfect. We'll put that all in the show notes. Well, Anna, have a wonderful rest of your day. Good to hang out. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.